Today, I want to talk about the technologies that I am going to be taking into 2024, or more realistically, the first half of 2024. But I really am trying to be better about that. One of my biggest goals for this year is to pick technologies, pick stacks, do things, and focus much more on building complete products and complete projects rather than constantly jumping from thing to thing and messing around and building a bunch of to do apps and getting halfway through some demos and then moving on to the next thing. I'm really trying to focus on getting deep into a few things so that I can focus much more on product and marketing and really building and scaling stuff. So, I want to talk about the things that I have picked that I'm pretty much locking myself into for the next 6 months or so. There's going to be some flux here and there, and when I have a free week or something, I might go through and mess around. There's going to be some stuff in there like Remix and Go, where when I have time, I want to play with those, but those aren't going to be the core focus. The core focus is going to be the stuff that is powering the big projects I'm working on. I'll sort of talk about what those projects are, what the stacks for those projects are, and kind of the reasoning behind why I've picked each and every one of those technologies and how this is going to look in the future. So without further ado, let's start with the mobile technologies I'm using. So one of the things I started last year was a project called Block. I'm not going to go too deep into what the project is. I have a landing page linked below. It's deep in development. We're about halfway through the MVP right now. I'm the sole engineer. It's extremely difficult to build and has taken way longer than I was hoping, but the reality is this is a very complex app and I am spread very thin right now. So it's going to take a while, but I want to talk about the sort of stack that we're using there. So Block is a mobile app, and for that mobile app, we are using React Native and Supabase and Expo. So React Native is the obvious choice for me. I come from a React background. My 9 to 5 last year was basically as a React dev and a backend dev. I've been using it since high school, which was like, God, it was 4 years ago now, which is crazy. I'm a senior in college now, which is wild. But yeah, 4 years ago, started doing React. I have a lot of experience with it, a lot of background. Having it be multi-platform by default is huge. Again, like I said, I'm the sole developer on this project, so it makes a ton of sense for me to just sit down and have this nice multi-platform experience in a language and system that I'm familiar with in React Native. We're also using Expo for that. They have amazing build tools, and getting it deployed to test flight has been substantially less painful than it was in the past when I did some Unreal Engine work. This was way back before the channel, but before I did this, I did some work with Unreal Engine, and my friends and I, we built some really shitty mobile apps. I'll look and see if I can find them. I think they're dead. Okay, so quick editor's note as I'm going through and recording this, I actually found both of the games we published on the Google Play Store. They're terrible. Don't pay money for them. They're dead on the App Store. I'll go and see if I can get those like out for free. They're fun little relics of the past. They're not good, obviously, but I'm really hyped that these still exist. So I'll link those down below. That's crazy that those are still even out there. To time, I don't know we ever renewed our App Store stuff, so I think those might have disappeared. But we made some really shitty little mobile game type things, and we're like, yeah, we're going to be mobile game developers. We realize how silly that is and don't plan on doing it. But in that time, we were deploying a lot from Unreal Engine, so I got very familiar with dealing with the App Store's bullshit, and it sucked a lot. And Expo makes it a lot more pleasant. It's still not perfect. It's still not half as nice as just clicking the Vercel button. It's still not half as nice as that, but it's a lot less painful than it used to be. And a lot of the other tools that Expo has, like Expo Date Picker, all their utilities, I'll pull up a list of them here. They're phenomenal. They've been instrumental in getting Block working, and I really, really like what they built here. As this gets further along, this is definitely going to be the way I build mobile apps. And then, of course, for the back end, I picked Supabase. The reason I picked Supabase is because I am the sole developer and I want a clean and easy full stack experience. I did not feel like building a separate REST API for my backend. I did not want to make a Golang server and a React Native app and have to manage those two back and forth. It would suck. So what I'm doing is I'm using Supabase and the client-side SDK to manage my database, do all that stuff, make my SQL queries, basically from the client using Supabase's API and all that stuff. I think I have a video about that somewhere. If not, I'll make one this year for sure. But yeah, that has made it much more tolerable, really, to sit down and actually get this app built. So that's sort of what I'm looking at for mobile. Oh, one other thing is native wind. It's just the Tailwind for mobile. Tailwind has become, and I'll talk about this in the web section, but Tailwind has become my primary way of doing styles and making UIs. I'm super familiar with it. I'm super fast with it, within reason. If you watch the recent videos where I went and implemented a feature, you'll see that it's, not always perfect. You guys definitely left some comments that I was wrong on some things, but, I'm pretty decent with it. So Tailwind is my preferred way of doing stuff there. So Native Wind is the natural extension to that. So obviously that's what we're going to be using there. Now I want to talk about web, and this is really the core of what I do. Block is a really cool project, and it is one of my focuses right now. I put a ton of time into it, but web is really my bread and butter, and that's what I'm most focused on. And in the web world, I have two primary projects that I'm working on right now. The SvelteKit e-commerce site, which I have had tons of videos on and have tons more videos coming on. That is written fully in SvelteKit. It is now called Sediment Art. I'll have more information on what that actually is and how that's going to really be used very soon. I've said this in other videos, but this is actually getting deployed and used in the real world. We're really going to use this e-commerce site. So we'll have the whole thing be open source, and you guys can see, what it looks like to have a fully deployed and working, functioning SvelteKit e-commerce site. I am super excited for this. The whole project has turned out way better than I expected. Back when I first conceptualized this in November, I thought, oh yeah, we'll just do this in a couple weeks and then get it out and do it. It's been much more ambitious than that. It's gone much bigger than I expected it to, but I'm pretty thrilled with how it's turned out. I think it's really cool. More to talk about that in the future, but yeah, that whole thing is being built with SvelteKit. Then the other flagship project I'm working on in the web world is obviously InsiderViz. The current production site, which if you go to insiderviz.com right now, you'll see is actually a Next.js. It's really a T3 stack site. It's pages directory Next.js, TRPC, Planet Scale. We have a separate Golang backend with a MongoDB server. That is really where all of, when this channel started, I did a ton of Golang videos. All of that came from the fact that I had this separate Golang server for InsiderViz, and it really was a great experience building all that, and I think it was very useful. Although I have realized that at this point, basically having a Golang server up here, and then a Vercel server, or really a Next.js server up here, and then talking between those two, and like database to go to Next.js to the client is silly when I could just do database to Next.js to client, and we're just reading out of the table, and if you index everything, there's no real performance gain. So that whole thing was silly, but that was just my lack of experience. The site is eventually, well, it's in progress, but it's being rewritten and rebuilt in SvelteKit. There's a variety of reasons for this. One of the biggest ones is getting rid of the virtual DOM. Our project heavily relies on D3. One of the coolest things we built on here are these graphs and stuff. They're really cool, really good graphs, but the way we did that is with some heavy custom D3. And D3 does not play super well with React. You can make it work, and obviously we did, but it's not that pleasant, and it's a lot more pleasant to make it work in SvelteKit. So that part of InsiderViz is going to get turned into a SvelteKit app. I'll talk about all the different pieces that are going to go into that in a second here. We also have a second site that we're working on right now. It's not done and deployed, but it is our marketing blog site. That is being written entirely in Astro. That's sort of the whole reason for that. The reason why we're doing it separately in Astro and not folding it into the main SvelteKit app is for a couple reasons. I'll definitely have a dedicated video on this, but one of the biggest reasons is because Astro has this awesome feature where you can take markdown files and it will read them in and you can use them as like content. You can set up formatting and stuff for them, make a directory of markdown files, then those will become pages within your site. So that's a super clean way of us organizing and maintaining a blog and a bunch of content that we need for marketing purposes and stuff like that. It's also just a really performant and great way to build websites. I've been super impressed with Astro. I haven't talked about it publicly too much, but Astro has been phenomenal. It is a exceptional framework. I would still say that for like complicated web apps and stuff like the SvelteKit e-commerce site and all that stuff, I would obviously still pick SvelteKit. I think SvelteKit has the best full stack experience there is. But for more staticky type sites and sites where you don't have a ton of really complex data going up and down and stuff, you don't have complicated dashboards and stuff, Astro is a great way to go. It is phenomenal. And especially if you have a lot of content and stuff like blog posts and stuff, the markdown system is fantastic. So Insider Viz is going to have a SvelteKit site, an Astro site, and then the SvelteKit e-commerce is obviously, or which is now called Sediment Art, is going to have a SvelteKit site, and all of those are going to be surrounded by basically the same technologies. So getting then into the nitty gritty here of like what pieces are going to be enhancing and working with this, I guess the first place to go is probably the data layer. For the data layer, for my database, I've gone back and forth on this over time. I think one of the first videos I ever made way back when, about a year and a quarter ago, was in defense of MongoDB. It's basically talking about why MongoDB does not suck as much as a lot of people say, and that it's really good and it has a lot of good things to it. And I stand by a lot of that. I think that the MongoDB was very nice to work with, and I think it's really good. But to be honest, as I've gotten better, I do think SQL is the way to go. I think a lot of my problems with SQL were just skill issues. As I've gotten better with it and as I've used better ORMs like Prisma and Drizzle, I've really come to believe that SQL is the way to go. For most things, especially for the kind of things I'm building where you need like a users table, a sessions table, you have a lot of data where relations are super important. SQL was built for this. They built the shit in the 90s. They got it right. It's battle-tested, time-honored technology. It really is as good as they say it is. So we're going to be sticking with SQL this year. MongoDB, currently Insider Viz is using it. We're going to be actually migrating off of that. We're going to convert all of our form data and stuff into SQL. It makes more sense because we need a lot of relations relating between a form, an issuer, a reporter, connecting all these things together. The model for SQL just makes more sense. It really does. So we are going to be converting over to SQL, and pretty much everything is going to be on SQL. And the SQL provider that we're going to be using is going to be PlanetScale. I've gone back and forth on this one a lot too, but generally speaking, MySQL, I think, is the most battle-tested, the longest running. It works really, really well. I've had a great experience with it. I like using MySQL, and PlanetScale is just a phenomenal platform. Not just for their like scale and stuff, which right now we don't really need. Although it's nice to just have that in the back pocket if something goes viral, you can handle it, which is sick. That's a really awesome benefit to having a big platform like that. But we are going to be using PlanetScale, not just for the scale, but because of all the amazing features it has on top of that. The database branching is fantastic. It's a great system for working with things. I have found that the most pleasant way I've worked with databases has been to have a main branch, a staging branch, a dev branch. I do all my work over in dev. I push with my ORM instead of having to deal with migrations and crap. I just push to my dev branch, and then I use it like a Git repo. I make a pull request to staging. I make sure all the changes work, nothing's going to break, merge it in, test everything on staging, then make a pull request to main, check everything, merge it in. That whole system is freaking fantastic, and I fully intend to use that more this year. On top of that too, PlanetScale just has tons of, their monitoring features are great, their regions are great. It's just a fantastic database. You guys all probably already know that. So PlanetScale is going to be our database of choice. From there, talking about the ORM of choice, that's probably going to be Drizzle. I've gone back and forth a lot between Prisma and Drizzle. I really like both of them. At my 9 to 5 last year, I was using pretty much entirely Prisma. It's a really, really, really good ORM, and I would not shy anyone away from it. I think it's fantastic. But I do think that Drizzle edges it out slightly, especially as they've picked up steam. The features that they're adding, stuff like the Drizzle Studio is great. Some of the performance stuff they're working on is great. And just the lightweightness, if that's a good word for it. Yeah, I don't know if that's a great way to put it. Just how lightweight it is and how great it feels to work with. I've had a fantastic experience with Drizzle, and that's going to be probably my ORM of choice for this year. They have the Prisma-like syntax now with their query, the like db.query thing, which is fantastic. Makes it way more pleasant to deal with relations, one to many, many to many, all that stuff. I think it's just great. I've talked about this before. I'll talk about it again. Drizzle is fantastic, although I would say both Prisma and Drizzle are worth your time. Next up, let's talk about the styling layer. This is something that I have historically been really bad at. I have always been more of a back end dev. That was my job title last year. It's what I really learned on and tried to be good at. But I'm really making an effort to get better at front end, to get better at UI, and to build better user interfaces as I'm getting more into marketing and distribution and these kind of things. So the things that I'm using for that are Tailwind and ShadCN. Both of these are fantastic. I'll talk about Tailwind first. Tailwind for me is the best way to do styles right now. I still some of my friends and roommates, the guys who I build Insider Viz with, brilliant engineers. They're fantastic, but they do not like Tailwind that much, and I've kind of abused them into finally using it and picking it up. And I haven't heard much complaining, so I think that's a good thing. But it's like, it just is so much more productive and efficient for me to sit there and just write all my styles in line. I just massively prefer it. It makes so much more sense to me to sit there and open up a div and then just quickly on that div say flex call, justify center, and then center everything. That makes so much more sense to me and is so much nicer than having to go, okay, center top column, and then go down and do .center.column and add my CSS and jump back and forth between these files. It's just a pain in the ass, and I just don't want to deal with it. So Tailwind is the way I'm doing my styles. And then on top of Tailwind, I am using ShadCN for my UI library. This is the secret sauce to how I've started to make UIs which do not completely and utterly suck. If you look at the SvelteKit e-commerce site, it's starting to look really, really good and really professional. And a lot of that can be credited to the fact that I'm working with one of the guys who I'm doing Insider Viz with. He doesn't have any social media, so there's nothing to really shout out here, but a brilliant fucking engineer. And he is really, really good at design and front end stuff. So he's made some beautiful stuff there. You will see that as we get this fully rolled out very soon. But I have also been able to make some stuff which doesn't look half bad. If you look at the admin page and stuff, they're pretty decently done, and that's by heavily crutching and using ShadCN. The way I've been building UIs lately is I basically sit down and I'm like, okay, what do I want this to be? I need to do this, this, and this. Then I go to ShadCN and I scroll through and I'm like, okay, which little pieces here do I want to use to put this in? And it's basically like programming Legos. I just sit there and I'm like, all right, let's take these little pieces here, mash them together, and then it works. Instead of having to come up with all of this from scratch, I just move these pieces together and I can get a really competent rough draft going, and then I can turn it over to someone smarter than me to go through and take it to that next level, or even sometimes I'm able to take it to that next level. But it does a great job of getting me to a point of competence and getting me there way faster than I ever would have gotten before. So that whole thing is just fantastic. So those two are my sort of styling implements of choice. As far as hosting goes, the three that I've been using are Vercel, Koyeb, and Railway. I think all three of these are fantastic in their own way. Vercel, we will probably be generally sticking to for our SvelteKit apps. I would either do Vercel or Koyeb. I think they're both great. The main reason why I sort of lean towards Vercel is just because they own SvelteKit, and it's just generally probably going to be cleaner and better. I know that there are some issues eventually as you scale. Vercel can get expensive. But if my apps scale to the point where Vercel is getting expensive, I've already won. Like, we're making tons of money. Things are going good. We've got traffic. I don't freaking care, man. Like, charge me $1,000 a month for my freaking hosting. If I'm getting charged $1,000 a month for Vercel hosting, I'm making a lot more money than that. So I really don't care. The DX is fantastic. Everything there is great. So that will generally be how we host SvelteKit stuff. Probably our like Astro stuff too. Koyeb and Railway are also really good hosting providers. Anytime I have to do anything with Go, or we're actually doing some stuff with Python, I probably won't talk too much about that on this channel because it's not going to be me who's doing most of that stuff. That's going to be the other guys for like our ML analysis stuff and Insider Viz that we're working on. But our Python stuff will probably get hosted on one of those two. I don't think we're going to go all the way down to AWS. At least I hope not. I really don't want to deal with AWS. I've done it. I've gone down that rabbit hole. I've done AWS. I have done Azure, and oh my God, that was painful. Do not recommend. If you really want to get into that, do it. But my God, does it suck. Just use the provider. Just take your little $5 a month Railway instance and be happy. Don't try and freaking set up an EC2 instance. It's it sucks. To me, it's just not worth it. It took so long. It was so painful, and I got no benefit out of it other than I get to say it's hosted on AWS. It's not worth it to me. So we'll probably host all the Python stuff and Go stuff and other miscellaneous background workers on those two platforms. But yeah, that's really the core of the web stack. There's some other miscellaneous things in here that I guess I could talk about, like Lucid. I've really been enjoying for icons and stuff. Cloudinary is my favorite way to deal with images right now. They have been fantastic. I've been using them for like a year with my 9 to 5. They're also sponsoring and working with us for the SellKit e-commerce site. I picked them before we even did that, so they're great. I really, really like what they've done. They've got a new Svelte SDK, which is awesome. So I'm going to be using that. So really, is there anything else major to talk about in there? No, I think for web, that's generally about it. Again, there's miscellaneous stuff, but oh wait, no, sorry, one more thing. Lucia, the authentication library. That is one other thing that we are going to be using in the web world. That works for both SvelteKit and Astro, so we can work those back and forth. Create your users table, create your sessions table, and you can utilize that in both apps. So when we have two different apps hosted for Insider Viz, our SvelteKit app and our Astro app, both of these can connect to our authentication very easily. It works seamlessly. I don't quite know if we can share sessions in between the two pages and cookies and stuff. That's a question I don't quite know the answer to yet. Worst case scenario, they have to like log into one and not the other. But by the time the main SvelteKit site is out, it won't really matter. You won't need to really be signed into the marketing page as much, and we might even move all that over. I don't know. I'm putting the thing before the thing. You know the metaphor. So we'll deal with that when we get to it. But Lucia is a fantastic authentication library. We're using Lucia v3. They changed a lot of how it works. I think it is for the better now that I've gotten to spend more time with it. I definitely need to make a dedicated video talking about the changes, because I recently made a video talking about how I use Lucia, and it was Lucia v2. So we definitely need to get an updated version of that for Lucia v3. Yeah, I'll put that on the list. Is there anything else? No, I think that pretty much covers the web. Let me know if there's anything else I missed, but that's the core of my web stack right now. I guess really the last thing I want to talk about here is going to be just some like miscellaneous stuff that I'm working on and learning with. Some stuff that I need to learn and get better at is definitely like the GPT AI stuff. I'm not a huge AI guy. Well, on principle, I hate it. I wish it didn't exist, but it does exist, and Pandora's box is open, so we got to use it. I need to figure out a good way to sort of leverage and use it. I actually turned Copilot off, funny enough. I used it a lot last year, and it was very nice. It did help me get some work done faster. But over time, it's just, it hallucinates a lot, at least in my experience, and it gets the context wrong. Maybe they've improved it since then. I turned it off about 6 months ago, and I haven't turned it back on since. But for me, I've been super productive even without it. So, I'll probably go back to that at some point. And GPT, I've used that. Really, the biggest thing I've used it for is like SQL and stuff. Just like, hey, how do I do this little random thing in SQL? Because I've yet to find a really good source of SQL documentation. Like if you're using Drizzle or Prisma, they both have incredible documentation pages. Just pure SQL really doesn't have that, at least from what I've seen. So using ChatGPT has made a lot of sense there. Also might do some stuff with like image generation and some fun stuff there. But, that's not the core of what I'm focused on right now. And then for the last thing that I want to talk about is just some like miscellaneous fun stuff that I want to try and I want to learn, and some technologies I've kind of been on the lookout for. First and foremost is definitely Golang and HTMX. I've done it before. I have built out some internal demos with it. I think it's a cool stack, and I think it's a really cool way of doing things. I really do like that idea of returning HTML directly instead of returning JSON. I think that is a huge W and will be a win in the future. I think RSCs basically do something similar where they just return the populated JSX or whatever. I don't even know what to call it. They just return the populated data from the server. I think it's returning HTML. I think I'm talking out of lane here because I haven't spent enough time with it, but I don't think that it's quite returning just JSON payloads. I think it is returning much closer to HTML, which is a win. So that's really good. I don't know if SvelteKit quite has anything like this yet. Although SpellKit, the way it sort of works, where when you like form actions and stuff like that, I think is a lot better. I really like how form actions work in Remix. Speaking of Remix, so I guess that's the next thing I'll talk about. Remix is another thing I want to take a look at this year. I made a video about Remix a long time ago. I messed with it. I made an internal demo with it. It's what I do all the time. At least I did all the time. And I'm kind of trying to move away from that, trying to focus on, again, bigger, more substantial, real projects. Not just making to-do apps all the time and playing with the technology, getting 5 inches deep, but not really going all the way. Yeah, so I really want to focus on getting, really deep into these technologies. But Remix is one I want to explore because it feels very similar to SpellKit in the sort of way they do things. The load functions plus the form actions and stuff like that, all of that really kind of combines together nicely to feel like a sort of SvelteKit. It's the same sort of idea, if that makes any sense. Really leveraging the core standards of the web, leveraging post requests the way they're supposed to be, leveraging when you go to a page, you load some data. The sort of way those two frameworks work, it makes a ton of sense to me, and it's how I like building web apps. I haven't been able to crystallize that into a video yet. I need to do that soon, but I will at some point. But I really like that. I want to try that. Also, of course, I need to freaking try RSCs. I have seen so much about Next. I guess it's just App Router. I've seen so much stuff about App Router. I've read the documentation. I've seen it. I've yet to really play with it. I need to sit down and do that. I don't intend on building any like production grade stuff with it, but I definitely need to at least use it enough to have something intelligent to say about it. Because right now, all I can say is looking at the documentation and the things I've seen, it seems really good. I mean, I really like the way RSCs look, and on paper, the idea of server components and client components, it all makes a lot of sense to me. I've seen a lot of people saying like, oh, this is super complicated and impossible to use and blah, blah, blah. I don't really see it. It really, to me, at least from the outside looking in, it doesn't look that hard. It looks really simple and easy and intuitive to use. So I want to try it. I want to see how it feels. And it might be, again, it's not going to pull me away from SpellKit. That's just not happening. But it might be a really good way to build stuff. And if you're in the React world and you're more focused on that, it looks pretty promising to me. So I need to try that out. Is there anything else? Vue. I have used Vue way, way, way back in the day. That's a story for another time, I guess. But we tried out Nuxt 3 when it was like in early beta. I think this was like summer of 2022, and it was tough. It was not good. I'm sure it's improved a lot by then. I've seen some really positive stuff about it, but back then it was bad. It was like production was randomly breaking for no reason, weird internal server errors, which were pointing to like, oh yeah, report this to the developers. This shouldn't be happening. Like, it had a lot of problems back then. I'm pretty confident those have been fixed, or at least I hope they've been fixed because we were working on beta software. But it was not a great experience, and I don't even fully understand the like mental model and stuff of Nuxt and stuff like that. Like with SvelteKit, it makes a ton of sense to me where like you have your .server files, and those .server files handle your GET requests and your POST requests. Remix is fairly similar, but they co-locate everything into one file. Next.js at this point, it's just everything is now run on the server unless you tell it use client. I haven't done any proper laughing at use client yet, but I guess we'll do that in a video. We'll give use client the mocking it properly deserves. I know that they have to have something like that, but it does feel deeply silly to put that little thing up there. But I get it. Yeah. I can't think of anything else. I kind of just ended up ranting and rambling here. I had some notes here, and I was just like, yeah, I'll just talk about stuff. And how long? Yeah, 30 minutes. This will suck to edit, but that's fine. If you guys got this far and you enjoyed it, definitely make sure you like and subscribe. And yeah, I will talk to you soon.